Ja, herzlich willkommen zur neuen Ausgabe SI Talk und bei mir wieder ein Startinterview. Luke Alexander ist bei mir, er ist President, CEO und Director bei Newcore Gold. Newcore Gold ist eigentlich ein neuer Explorer, der in Afrika tätig ist, aber das Management-Team hat eigentlich schon einen sehr super Track Record und das ist sozusagen ein neuestes Baby. Look, thank you to have time. I said in my German introduction, this is a start interview, so it's the first time that we talk about your new baby, the Newcore Gold. But this is what's really interesting is that the whole management team, what is behind the Newcore Gold, then this is not your first exploration project what you have. So maybe you can explain us a little bit what Newcore are doing and maybe a little bit more on your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me on your show and our project's the Enchi project in Ghana. It's a district scale exploration project. We've identified about 25 targets across the overall property, about 1.22 million ounces. So we can get into that in a bit more detail as we speak throughout the interview. But in terms of the management team, so my background personally, I spent 15 years on the investment banking side of the business, 12 years in London, basically advising mining and institutional investors on different projects around the world. So helping raise capital for ASX, TSX, and AIM listed companies with projects all around the world. A number of those projects were in Africa, so had a big focus on Africa. And that's ultimately where, when I moved from the investment banking side to become CEO of Newcore, over the years I had met a lot of the team involved in Newcore, in particular the board of directors. So our chairman, Doug Forrester, he and I had worked together for a number of years. He was the CEO previously of Newmarket Gold, which was one of the most successful companies in the past 5 years. It grew from a $10 million market cap to eventual sale to Kirkland Lake Gold 14 months later for about $1.2 billion. He's also a co-founder of Caliber, along with a number of our other directors who also co-founded that. A number of your listeners may be familiar with Caliber. It did the transformative deal with B2 Gold last year in Nicaragua, created about $600 million of shareholder value through that. Our VP Exploration was actually CEO of Caliber for a number of years when it was an exploration company. When it became a production company, Greg Smith is his name. He came and joined us as full-time VP Exploration. So extremely strong exploration geologist, as well as Mal Carvasca. She's heads up our corp dev and investor relations side of the business. She's got a very strong finance background. So yeah, you highlighted a strong team, and I think for a company of our size, it's rare that you find a team that has had as many successes as our team has had. And that's why we're so excited about this opportunity that we've got in Ghana.
We go a little bit to the project itself. In Ghana, there are normally two trends. In which trend you are?
So as you highlighted, Ghana's got a rich history of gold mining. It's called the Gold Coast for a reason. They've been mining gold there for thousand plus years. We're situated on the Sefwi-Bibiani belt, which, as you highlight, is one of two prolific belts which run through the country. We're right on the southern end in Ghana on the Sefwi-Bibiani belt. To the north of us, we've got the Chirano mine, which is about 50 kilometers away. That's one of Kinross's mines. It produces about 200,000 ounces a year, has 5.5 million ounce endowment and growing. Bibiani to the north of that sits at about 6.5 million ounces. And then to the north of that, you've got one of Newmont's two producing mines in country, the Ahafo mine, which sits at about 15.5 million ounces. Our asset actually butts up or ends at the Côte d'Ivoire border. Directly on the other side of the river from us in Côte d'Ivoire, you've got Teranga's Afema asset. If your listeners follow Teranga, you'll see that they've put out some very positive exploration updates on AFEMA. One of them they put out was mid-September, where they talked about how excited they were about the drilling they had done in the first half of the year. If you look at the merger announcement that was out a couple weeks ago with Endeavor, you'll see that AFEMA was actually mentioned in that, and that they're actually expecting to put out some results before the end of the year, and that they're quite excited about those results. So the AFEMA asset does share some of the same geology as us, and it runs through our property and into their property. So needless to say, we've got great neighbors in country with Kinross, Bibiani, as well as the Ahafo mine, and then directly on the other side of the border from us with Taranga's AFEMA mine. So so that's where we're located.
Mm. But it looks like for me that is a very big land package. So how it's come up with this big land package?
Well, we were able to stake it a number of years ago, and as a result, we were able to consolidate that land package. It's in terms of size, it's 216 square kilometers. So as you highlighted, a very big land package. Where the mineralization sits within our property and other properties that sit along the Sefwi-Bibiani or the Sefwi-Bibiani shear, it's the second and third order splays or shears that come off of that main shear. And if your listeners are looking at slide 13 in our presentation or want to pull that up, it's on our website. You can see that pretty clearly in there. So we've identified 3 different shears that come through our property. So the Boeing shear to the west, Sium shear, which comes right down the middle, and then the Niam shear, which comes down through the east of our property. And if you add up the total strike length of all of that shearing or splays going through our property, you've got 100 kilometers of strike length. So true district scale opportunity. To date, we've identified 25 different anomalies or targets across our property, of which we've only drilled on 6 of them, and 3 of them make up our current resource. So yes, it is a very large land package, and we've been systematically de-risking it and ultimately exploring on that and prioritizing those 25 targets that we've got to ultimately try to find as much gold as we can.
Come to the 3 deposits what you have. In which resource category or how many ounces you have there?
So currently all of our 1.22 million ounce resource sits in the inferred category. So the 3 current resource areas are Boeing, which has about 530,000 ounces, Sium, which has about 535,000 ounces, and Niam, which has about 155,000 ounces. Outside of that, we've made discoveries at 3 other areas, which do not fall in the resource category at this stage. Those areas include Kojina Hill, Quackrom, and Arati. Arati's at the northern end of our property. So we will actually get some results out shortly on Kojina Hill and Quackrom. That's been part of our 2020 drill program, and early 2021 we'll look to get back to both of those areas as well as Arati, as well as our current resource areas, and continue to drill across the overall property.
One question back to the deposits. What is the average grade what you have in this resource?
So 1.22 million ounces is 0.72 grams per ton. The real focus of all the drilling to date has been on the oxides. So the average vertical depth of the drilling that we've done across the deposits is only down to 50 meters, with the maximum vertical depth of only 175 meters. So we've really just been scratching the surface and focused on those oxides. So when you look at that 1.22 million ounce resource, 75% of it sits in the oxides, 20% sits in the transitional, and only 5% in the sulfides. So the economics from an oxide heap leach perspective are quite robust, and we have a 2015 PEA which we're looking at updating in Q1 of next year. But the economics are quite robust from a heap leach perspective. But one of the things we're going to focus on with the additional drilling that we're doing, the 58,000 meters, is to start drilling at depth for the first time ever. So we've got very good oxides across our property, and a big part of the reason why we've been really focused on that shallow drilling to date.
So that means you're looking now for open pit scenario, so that you look first for the oxide and then going deeper. But normally the jackpot is sitting in the sulfide. That's normally where really the big deposits are, and Ghana is well known also for this big project. So when you really think you can go deeper and looking then for the big pot.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if your listeners are looking at our presentation, I'd suggest they look at slide 15, because that ultimately highlights exactly what you're saying, which is if you look at these greenstone hosted deposits, and you look at the ones along trend from us, including Chirano, which we highlight here on that slide 15 in our December presentation, where these deposits typically double, triple, and quadruple in size is when you start drilling at depth. And that's going to be a big part of our focus for the drilling going forward. So we've currently got 2 RC rigs drilling on site, focused on expanding resource at our Boeing and Sium and Niam areas. But then we've got a 3rd drill rig showing up any day now, and that's a diamond rig, and we're going to put the first deep holes ever into this project. Initially, we'll focus at Boeing. And again, when I'm talking about deep holes, we're talking kind of down to 250 to 350 meters vertical. So still not deep by global standards, but for us, given the deepest we've drilled so far is 175 and only averaged 50 meters, that's what we're going to target. And the reason for targeting below Boeing and Sium initially is, given the amount of drilling that we've done there historically, that's where we've got the best geological understanding of the structures. Again, if you're looking at that longitudinal section, looking at our Enchi project and comparing that to the Chirano project, you can see that we've really only drilled down to the level of the oxides. If you look at Chirano, where they made their initial discovery at depth, it was at about 250 meters. It was at the Paboesi deposit, and they encountered 15 meters of 14 grams per ton. So that's the kind of thing that we would hope for with some of the deep drilling that we're going to do. Is as we get into those sulfides, we start to find higher grades. And if you look at a recent press release that we put out for Niam, with some of the drilling we did there, we got into some of the deeper sulfides, and we actually encountered 6 meters of 6.5 grams. So as we continue to drill deeper, we're hoping to make some of those discoveries. But also, we're not going to lose focus on the huge opportunity there is for us to continue to expand near surface resource, and we think that will continue to add significant value for Newcore and ultimately our shareholders.
But what is your end goal? Is it to bring it to production, or to prepare the project beauty enough so that somebody comes in or step in and buy the whole project?
Well, I think we're taking a twofold or two-pronged approach from that perspective. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to create as much shareholder value as possible. And we are very well aligned as management and insiders. We own 32% of the business. So ultimately, we think as shareholders first. So we've got the team to be able to build the project if that makes the most sense, and we think that will create the most shareholder value. We've also got the institutional backing and support. If you look at our shareholder register, we're about 32% owned by institutional investors at the moment. So we will continue to evaluate whether it makes sense for us to bring this into production. But our ultimate goal is to build it to a 4 or 5 million ounce resource. Once you're at that kind of size, you're looking at 20-year mine life at 200,000 ounces per year, or 25 years at 200,000 ounces. So you've got the size and scale of project that will be attractive to mid caps and majors. So at that stage, we think we'll also have a much better understanding of the sulfides at depth, as well as a number of these other targets that we're drilling for the first time ever, or that we're doing follow-up drilling on, and we'll be able to properly evaluate the economics at that stage. So if someone comes along and decides that they want to build it for us, then we're open to that, but we're also happy if it creates the most value for us to build it ourselves, then we'll push it forward from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understandable. For next year, for the next 12 months, what should be the major milestones, or what should be the major driver for the share price?
Exploration. I mean, that's going to be the biggest driver. So at the moment, we closed a $15 million financing at the beginning of November, and we announced an additional 50,000 meters of drilling. So if you look back, we completed an initial 8,000. We raised capital, announced an additional 50,000. We've currently got 2 rigs on site, one of them drilling at Boeing, one of them drilling at Seum. We've got that 3rd diamond rig showing up, which I talked about, which is going to drill some of the first deep holes ever. And then beginning of next year, so in January, we'll look to get 1 or 2 more diamond rigs on site and continue to explore. So we'll have results out every probably 3 or 4 weeks. And if you look at our news releases over the last 2 months, you'll see that that's consistently what we've been doing, is putting drill results out every about 3 weeks. And that will be the case all the way through till May of next year. Our plan is to complete the entire 58,000 meter program by May of next year. So we'll be very active from a drilling perspective. The other thing I would add is that I highlighted that we are going to be updating our PEA. So we will have that updated by, we're targeting the end of Q1 of next year. And that we think will ultimately create a further underpinning of value for the company. If you look at our 2015 PEA, which is now outdated because we've put out a 1.22 million ounce updated resource, that 2015 PEA had a 712,000 ounce in-pit resource. We've obviously significantly increased that with our current resource. So we think by updating that PEA, it'll put some fresh numbers out there that people can ultimately use to model the company and come up with a valuation, which we think will further support the company. But the focus, again, is exploration and growing the overall size of the resource. It's not to, at this stage, build a 75 to 100,000 ounce heap leach production company.
Mm-hmm. To the end of the year, we get a new resource update. So after this whole drill program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we may actually be able to have a very small resource update as part of our PEA. Mm-hmm. To date, we've completed about 14,000 meters of drilling, including that initial 8,000 meters. So as part of our PEA, which we will have updated in Q1 of next year, we will look to potentially add some of the drilling that we've done to have a small resource update as part of that. But ultimately in Q3 of next year, once we've completed the entire 58,000 meter program, that's when we'll ultimately look at putting a full resource update to incorporate all of that drilling that we've done. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason we're targeting May of next year to complete the drilling is that's when the rainy season starts. So it's a good timeline for us to get the 58,000 meters drilling, and then at that stage we'd look to ramp down to a couple of rigs and then ramp back up in the end of the year to start aggressively drilling again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also you need a time also to summarize all these drill meters. It's take a little bit time to get a new strategy. Coming to the shareholder structure, how many shares outstanding? You say you have a big portion in the stock. So, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the structure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we currently have just under 99 million shares outstanding. No warrants, which I always like to highlight because we've never had to issue warrants to attract capital, and I think that speaks to the quality of the asset and the team that we haven't had to use warrants to get people to invest in the company. On the last financing, which we closed at the beginning of November, we added an additional about 15 institutional investors to our share register. So that takes us to about 35% institutionally owned at the moment. And those are all kind of primarily long-term focused investors, dedicated precious metals investors. A number of them are groups that I've worked with for the past 15 odd years. So great to have the support from those investors and have them share the vision that we've got from an exploration perspective. In terms of management and insiders, we own 32% of the business. And one of the things I mentioned is we're obviously very well aligned with shareholders and ultimately think as shareholders first. But the other point I'd make with regards to that holding is this isn't a company where we gave ourselves a bunch of stock at a penny a share and then came around and had investors invest at 50, 60, 70, 80 cents a share. We all put hard dollars into the company alongside other investors, and a number of the management team and insiders have been doing so for a number of years. So that'd be the capital structure. Under 99 million shares out, no warrants, 35% institutionally owned, and then also 32% owned by management and insiders.
Two last questions. One is what was the last price of the private placement in beginning of November?
The price was 80 cents per share.
Okay, so that's 80. What is it? At which price you trade now?
It's about we trade around 70 cents at the moment.
Yeah. So the last financing was higher than the actual share price. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a good opportunity for investors to get in. I mean, I think since the beginning of November, we've seen the overall market soften for gold companies. And I think that's, partly to do with the fact that, vaccines are now being rolled out and some of the uncertainty around the elections in the U.S. have kind of dissipated, and it looks like there'll be a clean transfer of power. So as a result, the entire gold sector has softened a little bit, and we've been part of that.
Okay. At the moment, I see in the presentation you have $17 million in cash on hand. But after the exploration program, what do you expect that how much money you have in your bank account?
The way I'd look at it is after our exploration program, we'll be able to run the business for another year.
Okay.
So we won't need to raise capital, but we'll be able to ultimately run the business. We'll be able to analyze all those results that we've had come out. We'll be able to update our resource, put out an updated resource. So though we'll be able to get all of that stuff done as part of the as part of the completion of our exploration program. So so we'll be down to a year of cash once we're finished drilling. Mm-hmm. The other thing I might just add from a kind of in line with the capital structure side of things is we're very well backed by institutional shareholders, management's aligned, but we're also very well supported by the investment banking community, specifically in Toronto. So we've currently got 5 investment banks who cover us from a research perspective. They all launched within about a month and a half or 2 months of us relaunching as Newcore Gold. And again, I think for a company of our size, it's pretty rare that you find that kind of support from tier 1 investment banks. And again, I think that ultimately speaks to the quality of the asset and the team, that those groups want to get behind the company and ultimately want to be part of what we think will be a huge success for shareholders.
Absolutely. That's was maybe one time I saw the 5 research coverage. That's really unusual. You see a lot of companies, they are much bigger and they have no 5. They cover the stock. Luke, thank you for your first introduction to your company. Hopefully we have time maybe in April, May or so that we can make an update when we have more numbers of drilling or after the PEA. And hopefully we have also then or can meet us in person. That at the moment it's not possible to travel around. And the PDSC is also a virtual PDSC. I can imagine how this works, but we will see. But thank you for the first introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And I just encourage your listeners, please, we're on social media, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. So please follow us there if you want to keep updated, as well as we're always keen to engage with our shareholders and prospective shareholders. So feel free to reach out to us through our website and we'll answer any questions you have. And Joe, really appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you. Ja, das war erste Information über Newcore Gold. Sehr spannend, extrem interessantes Management-Team. Sie haben hier einige Namen, woher die kommen. Newmarket Gold, Calibre, Northern Empire. All die Firmen kennen wir schon alle. Auch die Leute, die hier sind, die haben alle einen Track Record, der sich gewaschen hat. Ich habe auch schon mit einigen Interviews früher geführt. Um was geht's? Ghana. Ghana gibt es 2 große Trends. Sie sind in einem Trend drinnen, Sie sehen hier. Und das Projekt, was Sie haben, das hat bereits 1,2 Millionen Unzen in quasi großteils Oxide. Das heißt, das ist genau das, was mit Heap Leach gemacht werden kann. Das ist ein Open Pit, relativ einfaches Szenario, billig in Produktion zu bringen. 1,2 Millionen Unzen ist sehr viel, aber das ist natürlich nur das, was an der Oberfläche sitzt. Das ist gerade einmal angekratzt. Und er hat selber gesagt, das meiste Bohrungen gehen um 50-100 Meter tief. Die tiefste ist, glaube ich, 175 Meter. Da sind sie noch nicht einmal irgendwie beim Sulfide angekommen. Und er hat selber gesagt, 5% dieser Ressourcekalkulation ist in Sulfide. Alles andere ist Oxide bzw. in den Übergangsmaterial, und er hat es auf Seite Page 15, also 15, sieht man das extrem. Wir haben auch kurz besprochen, wenn man tiefer nach unten geht, wenn man bohrt tiefer, dann kommt eigentlich das, wo die Masse sitzt. Und das sieht man zum Beispiel bei der Kinross-Mine, erst unterhalb dieser Oxide, da kommt das Sulfide, und das sind die, wo richtig der große Kuchen sitzt, mit einer hohen Konzentration, viel höhere Konzentration als die Oberfläche, und das macht es eigentlich das Ganze sexy. Und genau dort bohren sie. Sie bohren jetzt bis Mai 58.000 Bohrmeter. Das muss man sich einmal auf der Zunge zergehen lassen. Das sind extrem viele Bohrmeter. Alle 3 Wochen sollen neue Bohrergebnisse kommen. Und und das, wenn das nur annähernd so ist, was allerdings total typisch für diesen Trend ist, also mir würde es wundern, wenn da unterhalb nichts ist, das wird dann eigentlich erst richtig den ganze Trigger. Und ein Konzept ist es, bis zu 3-4 Millionen einmal das Projekt zu bringen, und dann schiebt man weiter. Ob man es selber in der Produktion bringt, allerdings muss ich ehrlicherweise sagen, da kommt der Major und übernimmt das. Es sind ja genug Major in der Nachbarschaft, das braucht man sich ja nur hier auf dem Plan anschauen. Wenn man hier, Teranga ist hier, die Endeavour Mind übernimmt gerade die Kinross oben, Resolute ist hier, man hat hier unten Goldfields, Anglo Gold, also das sind die was eigentlich dann nachher die Company übernehmen werden, da braucht man gar nicht lang drüber reden. Und bei 4-5 Millionen hat man dann 10, 15, 20 Jahre Minenleben, wo sich dann das auch auszahlt, dass man da eine richtig große, fette Mine hinsetzt, und das ist eigentlich der große Positiv, und das ist das eine große Positive. Das zweite große Positive ist, sie haben no warrants, sie haben keine Warrants draußen, sie haben 100 Millionen Aktien ungefähr, haben die letzte Finanzierung bei 80 Cent gemacht, die Aktie notiert jetzt um die 70 Cent, das heißt, ich kriege es billiger aus wie die letzte Finanzierung, die keine Warrants dabei gehabt haben. Das ist gerade einmal ein Monat aus, sage ich mal, wo die quasi das abgeschlossen haben. Und da muss ich ehrlich sagen, ist das natürlich jetzt eine super billige Möglichkeit, dass ich dort reinkomme. Ist natürlich nicht kurzfristig, sondern eher langfristig. Und was auch interessant ist, er hat gesagt, es gibt keine billigen Aktien. Auch das Management hat immer hart Geld rein investiert und immer selber mit den Aktionären mit investiert und nicht billige Stücke abgegriffen. Und was auch sehr interessant ist, sie haben 5 Research Coverages da, Haywood, Carmack, Sprout, Stiefel, die haben Raymond James, das ist absolut untypisch für eine Company von deren Size, die gerade einmal 70 Millionen, 75 Millionen Marktkapitalisierung hat, dass solche Leute eigentlich ein Coverage machen. Das zeigt auch, wie gut das Standing ist von dem ganzen Management-Team in der Community, sonst wäre das nicht möglich gewesen. Das eine sind die No Warrants und diese Research Coverage spricht eindeutig auch nochmal fürs Team. Also spannende Company, das ist auf die Watchlist. Ich werde da wirklich ein schweres Auge drauf werfen, vor allem deswegen, weil ich kenne die ganzen Leute nur von Newcore Gold und das war wirklich auch damals eine sensationelle Story. Und das war wirklich, ich habe damals mit Doug Forster ein Interview geführt und das war wirklich eine Traumstory. Ja, das war's, Startinterview von Newcore Gold. Ja, und das nächste machen wir dann in ein paar Monaten, wenn wir die nächste PEE haben. Ja, das war's im Dezember, 9. Dezember heute. Viel Spaß und bis in Kürze. Tschüss und Baba. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.